about the fact that Tua Tagovailoa allegedly suffered a concussion on Sunday and the opinions of people. But let's be very clear about this. The Miami Dolphins on Sunday initially announced that Tua suffered a head injury and then revised it to say that he had suffered a back injury. Now, the whole issue here is in the concussion protocols, and that is a phrase called gross motor instability, which you're seeing on the screen, I think, in my opinion, right there. Gross motor instability. If any player is ever demonstrating signs of gross motor instability, he's not allowed to play. Now, in this particular case, Tua Tagovailoa was taken to the locker room. He was examined by the Dolphins doctor and by an unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant that was appointed by the NFL and the NFL Players Association, jointly agreed to. Those two individuals allowed Tua to go back into the game on Sunday. But, again, according to the concussion protocols, if you are demonstrating those gross motor instability skills at that moment, you should not be allowed to re-enter the game. Now, the protocols also apply to brain, neck, and spine injuries. So the Dolphins have been adamant that he didn't suffer a concussion and that it was a back injury. Well, if we're going to use that then you could say that the spine is a part of the back, and under the concussion protocols, once again, he should not have been allowed to re-enter the game on Sunday. He was listed all week long as questionable. I've spoken to teams that have called me since this injury occurred that said that their training staffs would not have allowed Tua to play on a short week last night in the circumstances that he experienced last week. Now, he did play, and every team has a different medical staff and different standards. But again, I come back to gross motor instability. It's the phrase that's in the protocols. It's the phrase that people aren't using. People have said he has a concussion. The Dolphins said he didn't have a concussion. We don't know whether he did or he didn't. What we do know is that when he walked off that field on Sunday, something did not look right. Something was wrong. And Tua was allowed to re-enter the game after being cleared by the doctors, leading up to the circumstances last night that left everybody with a deep, disturbed feeling about how the system had failed.
Shefty, there is probably no one in the world who talks to more people every single day involved in the National Football League than you do. Can you share what sorts of things you were hearing from people you talked to last night after this took place?
There were a wide range of emotions, but a lot of people were deeply bothered and deeply upset about the way that this all transpired. Again, the NFLPA had initiated a review on Sunday. That probably was going to take a couple of weeks to complete. In fact, interviews were scheduled to begin today, and they didn't, or maybe they will later on. So everybody was going to try to get to the bottom of the situation and what occurred here and what didn't occur. But there was a short week in the interim, and I think everybody who watched it, whether you were a part of the National Football League or not a part of the National Football League, could not have felt good about what they saw about a player demonstrating gross motor instability on Sunday, playing again 5 days later, and suffering the injury that he did last night where he had to be stretchered off the field and to a local hospital. It was very upsetting. It was very disturbing. Fortunately, he sounds like he's doing better this morning, well enough to be able to go back to Miami with his team, and we'll see where the situation and the investigation goes from here.
All right, again, we will hear from the coach a little later this afternoon. Shefty, I'd love you to stay with us here as I bring it to the group here. And as you would imagine, a lot of the emotion that Shefty is talking about has been shared here, particularly by our former players this morning. And Ninko, I would turn to you. There's something, the first thing you said to me when I saw you this morning at 6 o'clock is something that I think the entire audience should hear.
Yeah, 54-year-old Tua will look at 24-year-old Tua and say, why'd you go play? Why'd you play Thursday? You didn't, and that's the problem. That's the problem that we have in the NFL. Is number one, I'm sick that this issue even came up because we know now in 2022 that things had to change. Things had to change. I have teammates that aren't here anymore because they had brain damage. They had CT, and you know I think back to when I was younger, and I think everyone, even if you didn't play football, you could think back to when you're a younger person, you are like, man, why would I put myself in that position? And, you know, the NFL, the Dolphins, the doctors, trainers, anyone that was included in this decision, they failed the player, because it's up to them to make sure that the player is protected from the athlete. And an athlete's mindset, the player's mindset is, I'm okay. I can play through it. Don't take me off the field. I don't want to let this guy down. I don't want to let my teammates down. I don't want to let people down. I have a lot of people that are counting on me to be great. So I don't want to come off the field. And a concussion, you don't know what happened. You don't know that you have a concussion. That's why you see a boxer, an MMA fighter, when they get knocked out, they stand up and the ref goes, yo, you were knocked. They don't realize it. So a football player, it's the same thing. A football player could be running down the field, you get caught, you get up, you look around, you don't know what happened. That's why it's up to everyone else to use common sense. Common sense. This is a common sense thing. You can watch that play Sunday against Buffalo and see Tua hit the ground. I instantly said he got a concussion. He's out. He's out. Because you don't sit up, you don't shake your head to get the cobwebs out, you don't stand up, do it again, and then tumble if you have a back injury. Doesn't happen that way. So it's common sense. And if you are a doctor, someone that went to school professionally for this, you should be the first one to say, yep, he can't play. He can't play after this. And you can clearly see him, you hit his head on the ground, sit up, shake his head, there it is, again, shake his head twice, start to run, and you fall down. There's a process in an MMA fight when a guy gets knocked out. What do? They keep him on the ground. They bring a stool to him. He sits on the stool. When he's ready, they stand him up. They have people around him and make sure he doesn't fall down, because your body's reaction to getting knocked out is you're unstable in the legs. That's why they have that in the protocols to look out for when a guy's woozy. Oh, he's woozy. And as a player, you can see a guy, you're like, yep, he got it. Friendly fire, 2 guys on the field going for a tackle. Oh, he got it. Receiver going for a catch, hits his head on the ground. Oh, he's out. You see it constantly. But it's a problem that needs to be addressed through the protocols. The protocol has failed. It failed the player last night, and it bothers me, because down the road, right now, yeah, great, okay, the head coach, yeah, he flew home with the team, he just a concussion. The head coach had a concussion like that? No. Does his family have to deal with him 20, 30, 40 years down the line? No. It's because down the road, the next guy will learn, oh, the next guy, 10 years from now, oh, the next quarterback. And that's the problem. They keep pushing these guys down, us, the players, former players, down the line. And then when you're older, you're broke down, it's your family, it's people that love you that are having to take care of you. And that's the issue.
Based on what Shefty said and what my own eyes saw last night, somebody needs to be fired. Because like Rob just said, it is about the next guy and making sure we enforce these policies to protect players when it comes to potential brain injuries and concussions. When I was watching with my wife last night, she didn't understand what was going on. Why are his arms and his fingers frozen? What's happening? I said, I know what's happening. That's a concussion. Now, I didn't know the term fencing for the frozen fingers, but I knew that because I had spent 16 years at high-level ball between college and the NFL. I also knew what I saw in week 3, late in the first half of that game against the Buffalo Bills. And what Shefty said drives the point home. It's about head, neck, and spine injuries and gross motor skill instability. That was present in that event. And so even though they might have thought he could return to sport after asking him some questions and taking him through some baseline tests, why not err on the side of caution and protect the player from himself? Even if that means losing the game, we're talking about a player's, not only his career, but his livelihood, his life beyond playing football, not just his livelihood. And so that's the part that doesn't fit right with me. And that's why the NFL has to send a strong message about what took place the last 4 days with Tua, just to make sure that this doesn't happen again with any other players.
You know, I've been hosting talk shows long enough that this conversation was just beginning when we were on the air. And Mike and I remember at one time interviewing Chris Collinsworth at the beginning of this, the longtime receiver. Obviously, everyone knows him now from the broadcast on NBC. And he said, look, if I'm playing football, I'd much rather you hit me in the head than hit me in the knee, because the knee, I'm going to be out for the season. That was the mentality of pro football players. You played the most recently.
Yep.
To what degree have you seen that evolve? Younger players who have come up at a time when we have all this information, we have all this knowledge. To what degree have you seen that culture change inside the NFL?
Night and day. It's night and day. I mean, even in the last 5 years, since Canty played, right back in 2015, like I finished my career in 2019, 2020, the mentality of players has changed. There's more information, number one. There's a better understanding of, man, there's life outside of football. Not just after. You heard Tyreek Hill say it. There's life outside of football. You're a human. You're a husband. There's so much more. And so players now are saying, man, you see so many, like Luke Kuechly, guys retiring early. Man, why did you retire? And what do you, I'm seeing people like Marion Barber, your former teammate, the Dallas Cowboys, I used to watch. Like, I'm seeing people.
Yeah.
And then the NFL's like, well, it was really this and really that. It's not really this or really that. You can talk about all the, we got to do more research and we're still developing, while the players end up being the test dummies for the development. And so other side people say, well, you're the one who signed up for it. You're the one who does it. But as an athlete, yes, there's this idea of I want to provide for my family and all these things, but we are interwoven. You're part of a team. And so there's another